Hey guys, I just wanted to answer a few questions that a few of you had and just provide a little bit more information about MIDI messages. Now, just as a reminder, when we're talking about MIDI, one of the most important things to understand is that we are not talking about audio. MIDI is purely sending a digital message which can be translated by a synthesizer or a sampler or any virtual instrument that receives MIDI information. And depending on what that instrument is, that information can be translated many different ways. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the MIDI messages themselves because I know it's a little bit intimidating just reading about it in a book. And know that I'm not expecting you to understand every nuance of the binary code that's within MIDI. It is helpful to understand what's actually happening when we create MIDI and the messages that we're creating as we do it, because the better you understand that, you'll have a better grasp of why we would choose one thing over another. So in the book and just in general, it talks about the MSB and the status byte and the data byte and bits and nibbles and words. And I know it gets a little bit crazy. So let's look at it this way. Each MIDI message has 3 MIDI words, and a MIDI word is made up of 8 binary numbers, so either a 0 or a 1, and those are called bits. Now, the MSB is the first part of the status byte, which is telling us that it's a new message coming in. So basically, if the MIDI word or the MIDI message has 3 words. So there's the status byte and then 2 data bytes that follow. So the status byte is basically telling the whatever the device is, hey, there's a new message coming. And those messages can come simultaneously or they can happen at different times. But basically, it's kind of like a way of saying, hey, we're starting a new message. In a similar way, when we're writing a sentence, you start the sentence off with a capital letter. It's kind of a way of saying like, hey, new information is on its way. And then it's looking for 2 words following that message that are going to tell us what it wants us to do or what it wants the device to do. So when it starts with a 1, that's a status byte. That means that there's a new message happening. Another part of that status byte word is the channel number. So basically, when we have 4 binary bits, which is a 0 or 1, it allows us to have up to 16 different messages. So that's why we are allowed 16 different channels, because the first 4 numbers in the status byte are note on or note off, and that it's a status byte. The second 4 numbers, or we call it in the book, it calls it a nibble. It's kind of a silly word, but it's a nibble, is 4 bits. And the second part of that is what channel number. So if we look at our status byte, we have hey, it's a status byte because it's got a 1 at the beginning, and then is it note on or note off? So that's the first 4 bits within our status byte. The second 4 bits are our channel number. And for example, 0000 stands for channel 1. So if we have 1001, that means the status byte is on and that it's a note on message because it ends in a 1, and then 0000 after that would be channel 1. So that would be new status byte is happening. It's a note on message, meaning that we're playing a note, and it's happening on channel 1. So don't worry too much about understanding every nuance of the binary, but understand that's what's happening. So then the virtual instrument understands, hey, there's a note on message coming in, and it's happening on this MIDI channel. And the reason we have 16 MIDI channels is because of those 4 bits within the nibble allows for 16 different channels. So basically, within our MIDI constraints, things are usually either 16 because there's those four bits, or 0 to 127, which would be when there's the 7 bits in the word, the data byte, which I'm going to talk about next. So let's talk a little bit more about the channel. So those second 4 numbers within your status byte are going to tell you what channel we're talking about. So for example, like I said, 0000 is channel 1, 0001 is channel 2, 0010 is channel 3. I'm not expecting you to remember all of that, but just understand this is how the computer is receiving that information. The next part of our MIDI message, or our MIDI sentence, if you will, is a data byte. Now, the data byte is going to tell us what note we're playing. So instead of having only 4 bits, that would only allow us 16 notes. We have 7 notes. There's eight bits in the data byte, and sorry, eight bits in the data byte. The first bit is telling us that it's a data byte. Remember, the status byte starts with a 1. The data byte starts with a 0. So the first one in the word is a 0, and then there's 7 numbers following, and all of the combinations gets us up to 128 options, which is why we can have 128 voices, 128 different levels of velocity. So within our MIDI word, our next word in the sentence is going to be what note are we talking about. So in our status byte, we have note on or note off, what channel we're on. Okay, so it's sending that, hey, there's a message coming in, it's a note on message, and it's happening on channel 1. The next word in the sentence is, well, what note are we playing? So we know we want a note on, and we know we want it on channel 1, but we want to know, hey, what note are we playing? So let's say, hey, we're playing middle C. So each note on a keyboard has a specific key trigger that is part of the data byte. So for example, middle C is 64. So it would send a message, hey, note on, channel 1, CC 64. And then there's a third word that's allowed, and that in this case for a note on message is the velocity. So we're going to say how loud or quiet, and it allows for 128 different levels from 0, meaning all the way off, all the way up to 127. So our full sentence is, we have a message, it's note on, it's on channel 1, we're playing a middle C, and this is how hard we're playing it. So basically, between all of those different parameters, we're able to create a MIDI sentence. I hope that it clears things up a little bit, and feel free to let me know if you have any other questions.